Well, howdy there. Dave Duford here. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. We're going to be doing a deep dive into the best final expense leads available. We're going to be doing an updated kind of overview of what your lead options are out there. This training is perfect if you are looking to get into face-to-face or telesales as a new or aspiring agent, or maybe you're an experienced agent kind of frustrated with the lead options that you're presented, and you're looking to partake in your due diligence and try to find some better quality leads that are out there that will give you more consistency in results when it comes to selling final expense, again, either face-to-face or over the phone. I will add at the end of this call, we're going to be talking about what I believe to be the worst final expense lead options available. This is something that I have been literally in my agency have been promoted to again and again and again by a bunch of different actors out there. And I'm going to explain to you why, because it's likely if you're doing any kind of due diligence, you're going to run across this lead. It's a terrible lead. You absolutely don't want to work it. There's a lot of issues compliance-wise with it. Anyways, I'll get to it a little bit at the end. But in the beginning, we're going to stick to really just going into depth what I feel are the best options. Talking first about face-to-face options, then telesales options for leads, and then concluding with some options that you want to stay away from. So howdy to Taroni, Hendy, 123, McCoy, Dale, Wade, Gons, Folaby. How y'all doing? Thanks for being here. So again, my name is David Duford. I own Duford Insurance Group. If you haven't yet checked out my website, if you're looking for an agency to join to sell final expense face-to-face over the phone, and you're an entrepreneurial in spirit and want to investigate how we could help you become a top producer, davidduford.com/FAQ. We also help agents sell Medicare as well. Check out davidduford.com/Medicare-Advantage. All right, so let's get this show on the road. So let's start with face-to-face options and exploring kind of what the best final expense leads are. So of course, my personal favorite, as some of you know have been around the block long enough, is direct mail sourced leads. I love direct mail. Even in 2022, direct mail, simply put, relative to all the other options available here for the face-to-face agent, is the best source of leads. So in case you're new, because we want to make sure y'all new folk know exactly how things work, what exactly is a direct mail lead for final expense? Again, I'm going to tell you the pros and cons here in a minute, guys, but and before I do that, I want to make sure that you're on board with understanding how this works. So first of all, direct mail, think of your standard junk mail that you get every single day. It comes in some kind of envelope, a detachable postcard, and the way it works with final expense, same exact thing. A bunch of junk mail goes out to our prospects. They look at it, and they open up the envelope typically, or they detach the perforated ends and open it and read it. And there's some copy about, you may qualify for a state-regulated program and pay for your final expenses, blah, 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 blah. There's different variations like the 255 Social Security benefit. Sometimes there's bribes to, I use that word loosely, to get you to send back for a free gift card at Walmart. All different various shapes and forms. But the idea behind it is the client sees it, and they've seen it a bunch, but now has decided it's time to fill the thing out, see what happens. So the client walks it back from the mailbox instead of tossing it in the trash like usual, reads through it, gets their spouse involved, asks them some questions. They argue a little bit like spouses do who've been married a long time. Then fill the thing out because they both agree, at least let's see what it's about. And then walk the thing back up to the mailbox, and then off it goes. And sometime over the next couple of weeks, the agent receives it and either calls and sets an appointment based off the information on the card, or equivalently as efficient and as beneficial, shows up unannounced at the door with the lead card in hand and tries to persuade Mrs. Jones to let him in. So why is this important? Why did I go through all this litany of steps that the client takes to actually, send the card back to where you get it as a lead? Because this is what makes direct mail profoundly a good source of leads. It's the level of intent and the level of engagement. These are the things that really, I think, delineate between quality leads and not so quality leads, is how well is the client actually involved in the process of wanting the information about life insurance or final expense coverage. And how well do they recall it? interested are they, and how much will they actually remember doing this stuff, right? And this will all become clear as we explain some of the other options. With direct mail, it just maximizes both of those, intent and recall rate, okay? And you want that, I believe, if you're going to sell face-to-face as much as humanly possible. Again, think about it. There's a physicality to sending this thing back. If you really think about how the leads generate, it's not like they're just, goofing around on Facebook and clicked an ad and then went back to arguing about politics or Joe Biden or something. They actually took the time to fill out the card, and they could have thrown it away like all the other times because they've gotten these cards, a million times over the last couple of decades. So that's meaningful. It really is. The fact that they went through all these steps and decided to send the thing back means that there's something there, and that's there is significant. And typically, agents who work direct mail, who have worked all these other kind of leads, which some are good and some are bad, notice a profound difference in the quality of their response, the recall rate, and really the interest in the product. And again, you want all these advantages in your favor, right? If you're selling any kind of product, it's not just about the sales pitch or the carriers, it's about the quality of the leads, okay? So direct mail, even in 2022, is the gold standard if you're selling face-to-face in the traditional format. Now, also what's nice about direct mail is there are more mailboxes than there are Facebook accounts or seniors looking online requesting information. So with direct mail, you tend to get a lot better saturation rate in the actual agents, or I should say the actual prospects that respond. One of the pitfalls we'll talk about here in a little bit with digital leads, specifically through Facebook, is there's a large geographic swath of area that you've got to commit to get the leads. Whereas with a good direct mail vendor, you can saturate very populated zip codes or counties and stay well consolidated in that particular area. That means less drive time. That means more appointments. That means more opportunity to make more sales, right? So, of course, it's not all rainbows and sunshines with any of these particular lead programs. There are definitely some drawbacks, and that does include some serious drawbacks with direct mail. We're going to definitely go through it. Sorry, I've got choke in my throat here, so bear with me. It is live after all. So one of the things that make direct mail really difficult, and I've been around a long time, since 2011. I remember back in the day when I could get a life insurance lead, a final expense lead that says life insurance on the first line of the first paragraph for like $25 back in 2014, 2015. Those were the days. Because the same kind of lead now costs probably 50 to 75% more depending on who you source the leads from. And it's likely those vendors that are supplying those are losing money or barely breaking even. The problem with the direct mail business of generating prospects or leads for final expense is that the response rates have been dwindling because Mildred is receiving tons and tons of cards, more so today than she ever has in her entire life. And when Mildred's interested in buying life insurance, she's not going to send all 10 cards back she gets every month. She's just going to send 1 or maybe 2. So that means there's 9 or 8 leads that never get responses to, which drags down the overall response rate. And what this translates into is just a lower response rate. You get less leads on a saturation basis, and you end up paying a higher average lead price. The going rate, if you've got a good vendor that provides good fixed pricing, is somewhere between $30 and $40 a lead. And that likely is going to continue to escalate over time as the interest in this business builds and builds and builds. And again, some markets are not this bad. There are definitely states where the response rates are a lot better, and therefore the average prices are a lot better. But there are particular states where it's just terrible out there with how bad the response rates are. There's a couple of ones that come to mind. Florida, Georgia, North Carolina is abysmal. Those states are very difficult to get a sustained, consistent level of response. And why? It's just there turns out to be a ton of agents there. Alabama's kind of in the same boat too. A lot of the Southeast in particular. Funnily enough, some states that are really good for response rates include places like Iowa, Michigan, Virginia, kind of these states that aren't the final expense meccas. A lot of the Northeast is pretty good on response rates too. Phoenix is tough. That's another one that's pretty hard. But the point is that you're going to get a variety of response rate outcomes depending on where it is that you're marketing for your leads. And I think it's just important to keep that in mind. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do direct mail. It's just have a sober outlook and a reality. And this kind of draws up to my point, like who would you want to do leads with, considering this response rate issue that is absolutely prevalent in the final expense market now. My advice to you, if you don't work with me, is find somebody who will provide you a fixed price per lead. Again, the biggest issue in this business of direct mail is generating leads and sourcing them at an affordable rate with consistency, right? But what you run the risk of, if you do what's called a per thousand mailer, that's where you buy 1,000 mailers for about $500, give or take, at a mail house. You run the risk of a low response rate. And it's more likely you'll get a low response rate, thus an average price point that's high, than you would the opposite of that, which is just like get, bukus of responses back. So, the point is, having a fixed price, it doesn't guarantee you're going to get exactly the response that you want, but it does guarantee that you're not going to pay more than the fixed price. You're going to pay exactly what the fixed price per lead is, and that's imperative as a new agent, is to control your cost, really more so than risking paying triple the amount of lead like some of these responses do. So, of course, shameless plug, we do a fixed price direct mail lead for final expense in my agency. We provide leads $30 to $40 a lead, depending on the type of lead you get. And the difference is what the lead says and the specificity of it, so on and so forth. But in many markets, we can get you fixed price leads, and you do not have to pay the true cost because we essentially subsidize it to keep you busy, so that you're not paying an outlandish fee per lead. And this can mean a big difference in the quality overall of your business as far as getting results go. So, and there are other ones out there that do fixed price too, but it's just imperative to make sure that you have access to that if you are in love with direct mail like I am. It makes a huge, huge difference. California, hey, Korea, how you doing? California's pretty good. I think it just kind of depends. I guess it's just different. But California, to me, in my experience, it's not as difficult as, say, Tennessee or Georgia or Florida. Like, those states are just terrible for response rate. North Carolina, too, especially. So less problems outside of the Southeast, really, at the end of the day, is the case. Although there are pockets of higher response rate areas in the Southeast, kind of more rural areas, in my experience. But either way, I've not seen as many issues out there than around my parts. I live in Tennessee. Okay, so that's direct mail. Guys, if you have any questions about direct mail or any of these leads that we go through, throw them in the chat. One of the things I do is I do my module or training first, and then I spend the rest of the time going through your questions in the chat. So happily advise you to feel free to use the chat to seek more insight or perspective. I'm here to help. That's why I do these live trainings Tuesdays and Wednesdays at 4 o'clock. And by the way, if you enjoy this content, I do cordially ask you to hit the thumbs up button, just because it helps YouTube share this content to agents who absolutely need the advice on where to go for leads and what leads to look at. Because unfortunately, the leads business is like the used car sales business. It's just full of shifty people that sell a lot of crap. So you got to be careful with what you do out there. Now, moving on. Let's talk about a good second place to direct mail as far as paid leads go, and that would be leads generated on Facebook. And so again, for those of you who are new, how do we generate leads on Facebook? First of all, there's a lot of times I talk to agents who are like, well, do I have to be on Facebook? I hate Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, or whatever their deal is. No, you don't have to have a Facebook account. What you're doing, though, is going to a vendor that does have a Facebook account, and they are running ads in the areas that you want, and you just simply buy the leads that are generated from those ads and then work them as they come in. So you don't have to be on Facebook or involved or create a page or any of that stuff, thankfully. Instead, you can just focus on letting them do their job and you working their leads. So some good things about the Facebook leads that I think make them a good second choice option to use. First of all is its turnaround time is fast. Unlike direct mail, which that's probably the biggest weakness, it can take approximately a month to get your leads. Facebook leads just take a couple of days. In most areas, it's very simple to turn an ad on and start getting interest, developing leads, and in a matter of days, you can be full-time busy working prospects that are of decent quality. That's great because that doesn't tie up your money as long as it does with direct mail. You can get to work right away, start seeing prospects and selling insurance in a faster way with less money tied up than versus what you would do if you were doing direct mail leads. Okay, so that's an absolute benefit as far as I'm concerned. Also, the intent is something that honestly varies depending on how the lead is generated. There's a lot of talk, a lot of chatter in the Facebook side of things on how you generate the leads. Do you generate the leads within the Facebook platform so the client never has to leave Facebook? Do you drive Facebook marketing off or your leads off of Facebook to a landing page? Do you allow them to fill out the information or do they have to manually type it in? Is there a lot of questions or little questions asked on the landing page? All of this allegedly, and I think there's some evidence to show for this, influences the intent of the prospect. In other words, what we're worried about, and this is kind of the death knell to Facebook, I think, in a sense, is that, it's a platform very much dedicated to advertisers and creating avenues to display and market and sell product or create, in our case, leads. But they make it almost too easy. And that's one of the weaknesses of Facebook leads with the wrong kind of vendors, is that you can cheaply develop leads and never have anybody leave Facebook. But it's so easy to complete that unlike the direct mail we talked about earlier, there's no engagement. There's no process the client is invested in to actually request the information. So they therefore forget it more often. They weren't that serious because it was just, in a sense, too easy to complete. So again, a lot of these vendors now, some of which I'll mention here in a minute, they circumvent this issue by driving them to a landing page, which is off of Facebook onto a website. They make them fill out everything manually on their phone. They're asked a couple of follow-up questions, and all of these are useful to progress the conversation further along than had you not asked that. But is it the equivalent of direct mail? In my opinion, largely no. The quality of a Facebook lead to me is about 2/3 the quality of a direct mail. So in other words, direct mail just is better by 50%, essentially, if you were to ask me kind of in short what I think about the comparison. Yeah, a lot of people here, like silver tip, waste of time, 100%. Totally understand. There are vendors, and that's the thing too. There are vendors that process garbage leads, and how they process and create the lead, they use disingenuous, essentially misleading copy. I mean, I've seen ads where there's an old dude sitting in front, smiling in front of a Social Security Administration image, and the context looks like this is from, Social Security Administration, right? It's misleading. And that's the kind of stuff that gives the Facebook lead vendors a bad name, and Facebook leads in general. So you got to be particular in who you do business with. And you need to ask these questions like, how are the leads generated? What is the process? Because a lot of these vendors exist out there, and they're all too happy to take your money without providing anything of substance to generate quality leads. Some cons with Facebook leads, kind of beyond the point of just kind of the murkiness of the vendors themselves. Certainly there's less shelf life. Again, the beauty of Facebook from an advertising platform is the ability to essentially identify the intent or desires of you out there, the end user. Facebook's goal is to monetize your usage of Facebook. As you read, post, and engage, and what you type and what ads you click, that develops a profile for advertisers to show you more ads of things that you have shown an interest in. And the action of clicking on an ad is a clearly definable motive that the likelihood is very high that you're going to click on more ads of the same type. So guess what that means? For all y'all that do Facebook marketing, when Mrs. Mildred clicks on that ad, guess what she's going to get for the next week? More and more and more burial insurance ads, okay? This is why Facebook's cheaper, because it's showing like-kind ads of similar interest based on that action the client took, which in this case was clicking on a burial insurance ad. And you will just see ad after ad after ad if you are in that profile of somebody doing that. Why is that bad? Because if you click on that ad and they fill yours out, you better move on that lead fast, because Mildred's getting more of this and she's probably going to click on more ads because it shows so much. And if her interest is there and hasn't really gotten anything, she's probably going to click on another one. You have to move fast on any kind of digital lead because of this retargeting process that Facebook does to get more ads selectively targeted in front of Mildred. Because why does Facebook do this? Because they make money off of you clicking on stuff. So they obviously want you to click on more of their crap so that they can get paid more. So this is inherent with Facebook. It's just the way it is, really, of all digital advertising anyway, certainly on Facebook platform, probably like that on others. So that is something you got to deal with. You just got to move fast on these, ladies and gentlemen. That, at the end of the day, is critical with any Facebook leads. And just like any leads that really we've seen in the Facebook or the final expense space, there have been escalating costs. I remember in 2017, you could get a quality Facebook lead for $15 to $17. That was a face-to-face regional lead. Some of these vendors we're going to talk about here in a minute do them at double that price. I mean, they're at close to $28 to $30 a lead, which is just crazy. It's basically a direct mail lead. And the reason that's happened is because so many agents have gotten into this business since 2017 that has been driven by the mass recruiting that's been going on, which has been good for clients, but from a lead or a client acquisition cost, it's just driven the fundamental components higher and higher and higher. And likewise, I do think that, one of the drawbacks with some vendors, it just depends on who you use. They have watered down the language in order to facilitate a lower acquisition or lead acquisition cost. And again, that's kind of why some people like Silvertip here, understandably, are complaining about the quality, just crap for a lot of vendors, and that's what they do. So it's just a thing with again, all vendors. You're seeing this global, when I say global, just a big picture drive of demand for leads and law of supply and demand. It's all leads have definitely gone up in price because of it. So who is a good vendor? What are some things you should consider? And then also I'm going to provide in a second one other strategy you may want to consider outside of buying leads with Facebook. So we used GameTimeLeads.com for a long time, but they have exited the business. I can't tell you why that's the case. The guy that runs that, Andy, very good guy. Not sure why he got out of the final expense space. He's still in the non-med term space. Probably has something to do with the escalating price issue. But as far as other good vendors that have out there that I've worked with personally, Tips, Tricks, and Closers, TTCLeads.com is excellent. Also, HappyAgentLeads.com. These are both good vendors that do a good job providing decent quality leads for both face-to-face, as we're talking about now, is also telesales. We'll briefly talk on that in a minute. Last option here you can consider as a way to reduce the lead pricing and to get more mileage out of these leads, but simultaneously making the business more complex, is to do it yourself, is to generate your own leads, self-driven or self-generated, and to not pay a retail markup, but to pay wholesale prices. Now, there's two programs that I've seen good success with. Gentleman's name is Bobby Villanueva. If you look on YouTube and do a search, you'll see a couple of interviews I've done with him. Also with Josh Jones of Agent Autopilot, does a Facebook course as well. Both of these work very well. You can learn how to set up your own Facebook marketing campaign, generate your own leads. It's not guaranteed. There's a lot of extra work involved. It's not appropriate for every agent. I think if you're more of a techie, you probably do okay. Bobby also offers a done-for-you service, too, at a higher price. I don't know exactly what the number is, but that's something I would absolutely consider, just to take out the bulk of the setup work, because that's where most people are lost at and get frustrated with and quit. That way you can just start marketing and tweaking and testing ads to see what plays out. And again, I have agents who do these programs. I've talked to agents who've done it. They do it remarkably well, and they generate leads at a very low cost point. I have an agent who I was talking to the other day. He generates a sale for $60 in marketing expense. So his client acquisition cost is $60. That is incredible. Okay, in the final expense space on direct mail, it's probably more like $125 to $150. So the fact that he's getting a sale for every $60 he invests in marketing is unbelievable. And that's not the only time I've heard that. I've heard acquisition costs for people doing it themselves in the $50 to $100 area, which is substantially very, very good. So do consider that if you feel like you can go through that kind of thing, learning how to do the marketing, being patient. It's not an overnight thing where you just flip a switch and go. It does take some time. Okay. The last thing I'll mention here for face-to-face before we talk telesales, there's only one real difference on the telesales side than what I've described. Well, two. Is seminar marketing. So I love seminar marketing. I think you're going to see a lot more of it now that COVID has kind of cooled down and more people are going back to normal, letting you talk to people in person. But essentially, seminar marketing is talking about our life insurance and final expense products in person to a one-to-many approach with a small group, medium-sized group, whatever, and cultivating leads from the presentation that you give. I love this strategy. I've done it for about a year, did about 100 of these back in 2015 and 16. I love it because there's very low cost to actually do the seminars. It shouldn't cost you more than $30 to $40 to buy a gift card to give away in a drawing, to buy donuts and drinks. But the exchange for that is, for that low price, you usually get high intent, high quality leads because they're sold on you. It's like what we're doing right now, except in person. And by the time you talk to people, generally people are interested to buy. And for a low acquisition cost, you know, in my experience, it's been and everybody's different, of course, but I would average about 1 or 2 sales per seminar, make about $500 to $1,000 in first year commissions. Which I don't know if that is impressive or not to you, but when you look at the cost to do it, which is just like 30 or 40 bucks, it's a pretty good return on your investment. So seminar marketing is just great because of that. It kind of upends the typical dichotomy. You pay more for a better lead generally, but here you pay next to nothing, but you generate one of the best quality leads that are available. So I like this, especially if you're cash strapped or you want to lower your average lead or average client acquisition cost. This will greatly reduce it, generate more profit and higher ROI for you than, of course, most paid lead programs will. What are the drawbacks of these? I mean, obviously, if you have a fear of public speaking, this is going to be detrimental to you. I'm a big chicken when it comes to doing public speaking. I've always hated doing it. It's always been like the most stressful thing for me ever. Why I can sit on here and babble on about final expense in front of 55 people live, I don't get it. But being in person doing it's just like a totally stressful experience. So, you know, if you have a fear of public speaking, I would just say get over it. It's not really that big of a deal. You're really talking to 10 to 15 people. It's no big deal. But it is an impediment, which is actually good because you can rest assured, because public speaking is like the number one fear most people have, you're going to have less competition of people doing it. The one con with it is that there's not a lot of potentially easily accessible public speaking venues. So the strategy I teach my agents, and I've got a full course that teaches this for agents who join, is to go to independent living facilities. And there just isn't a lot of those in the senior side of things. There are strategies to go to small churches. Those can be fruitful if you can get and nail down the ministers and the pastors. But this is a strategy of scaled up. You got to travel a lot. And I ended up doing that, covering like 5 or 6 hour radius around where I lived in order to do like 5 or 6 of these a week. So that's really the issue. So we kind of look at it as a bridge to getting started if you're cash strapped or you want to lower your average acquisition cost per client. So real quick here, and again, I'll get to those questions in the chat here shortly. Looks good here. Telesales leads. Let's talk about those really quickly. So first of all, everything I talked about earlier about Facebook leads absolutely applies to telesales too. The biggest difference is you're not going to generate telesales leads locally. You're going to do it statewide or multi-statewide. This has an effect to lower the average cost to where if you're buying leads, they should be in the mid-teens. And if you're self-generating them, they should be $5 to $10 depending on which markets you're covering and, of course, obviously what the lead says, etc. But telesales leads, if you're doing an outbound strategy where you're calling the lead that was already generated, I think the best thing to do is to either generate or buy some kind of lead that's on Facebook, okay? So that to me is the number one way if you're doing an outbound strategy. I don't like direct mail for telesales just because it's so expensive. You might as well do our next option, which is some kind of live transfer lead. So this is what we call an inbound lead. This is where the lead calls you. In most cases, right, with the Facebook or other leads, you're calling the lead, pitching them on the spot, where live transfers are transferred to you, and they have an intent that's usually pretty high because they're willing to talk to an agent about life insurance, and you don't have to do the grind of making the outbound call. So a lot of people like the benefits of these, because the calls come to you, you have a 100% contact rate, so you're always talking to people who are interested. Well, we'll clarify that in a minute with our conclusion here on what to stay away from, because that's not always the case. But you are in a position where the contact rate is pretty much 100%. You're always talking and you're always pitching. The intent tends to be higher than an outbound strategy with the right kind of leads. More on that in a minute. But the downside here is that they're more expensive. A good quality, again, keyword good quality, live transfer probably is at minimum $40, as high as $70. So for example, like what we do TV leads in our agency. Those cost $62 a lead, but Mildred's sitting around watching The Price is Right, sees our commercial play, she picks the phone up and dials it, it's live transferred right back to that agent. That's a high quality lead, because the willingness of a senior or anybody to pick up the phone and dial a number, knowing they're probably going to talk to a salesperson, that means their intent has to be pretty high. And yeah, you get some pranksters and drunks and stuff calling you, but a lot of these leads, like what we do, have a 30-second buffer. You just hit the dump button and you don't get charged for it, right? So it manages the elements of risk there. Other drawbacks here, besides the cost point, is to do live transfer successfully, you really have to cover a lot of states. I teach agents that do transfers with us on the TV lead side to do at least 15 states. Dozen probably is the bare minimum. 15 is better, and you need to make sure you got the big populous states like California, Texas, Florida, others as well. Why? Because it's a lower saturated lead. It costs more to generate. They're harder to find. And if you have a limitation of states, you're probably not going to get the lead flow high enough to where you need to see enough leads to see the kind of results that you want. There are some elements of risk and lost time, right, as a sunk cost, right? You have to sit around and wait for calls to come in. There's no guarantee you're going to hit your number every single day. I believe with more states, you have a higher chance of doing that, but that's just the reality of the way this business works, is that with live transfers, you're at the mercy of the transferor or the commercials, right? So you got to sit around and kind of have some dead time and be comfortable with that. Otherwise, you kind of go crazy waiting for something to do, okay? So some other vendors besides TV leads that, again, if you're an agent at my agency, you get access to these. I don't sell them independently. But as far as other vendors available, DataLot and EverQuote are good sources of live transfers. I've seen pretty good results with EverQuote, okay results with DataLot, but these are ones that you can look at for live transfer opportunities. So let's end this before we take some questions in the chat. Again, if you're watching this live, please consider hitting the like button to help spread the word of this video so other agents can watch it and get some insight to what leads are good quality, which ones to stay away from, like we're about to talk about. If you got questions about any kind of leads, throw them in the chat. Once I'm done with this last section, then we're going to wrap it up. And then I'm going to go over your questions, hopefully try to help you out if you got anywhere you want me to go into more detail on final expense leads. So here's the last thing I'll say here. This is more of a problem now, and I've talked with a lot of insiders in the business that run successful agencies, agents themselves on running leads, and here's the thing. There is a lead type that you absolutely need to stay away from 99% of the time, and it'll be clear why this is the case. There are a lot of vendors out here now who are pushing telesales cold call generated leads. When I say telesales, telemarketed leads, where the way it works is there's massive numbers of call centers, typically in Pakistan or the Philippines, that are pushing in a big way that I don't know what it is. It's like a gold rush for telemarketing over there to get into the final expense space and provide leads. The problem that I've seen others tell me is that unfortunately these lead houses are not compliant in the data that is provided to them or compliant in following the do not call rules. And the problem that exists at the end of the day is that the sources for these prospecting methods are not within federal jurisdiction. We can't fly SEAL Team 6 into Islamabad and basically, try these guys for breaking the DNC rules, right? they're outside of the jurisdiction for the federal DNC laws, right? So they can break them without any serious consequences. Instead, what happens now in response to just the ever increasing load of DNC violations, I mean, I've gotten probably 10 phone calls today for whatever, car warranties or something. The way that the public has countered against this is essentially allow the public to lay TCPA violations against somebody somewhere and to basically sue to get settlements out of. And because you can't reach these call centers because they're outside of federal jurisdiction, guess who they go after? You. That's right, the agent. You didn't know that you were breaking the law, or the call center was breaking the law, but there are professional litigators, Saul Goodmans of the world, I guess you could say, that are hustling you down for TCPA alleged violations with the goal of just settling for a few $1,000s. Worst case scenario, or I should say best case scenario. I have heard of one particular small call center who generated 5 leads. 5 leads is all they got from this particular vendor that I'm describing. He was sued for 6 unique separate violations for approximately $40,000 in violation. It's crazy. One small call center. And now he's fighting the case in court, partially because he's incorporated and he can't represent himself, so he has to hire a lawyer. So the problem with this is, guys, telemarketing is just not a situation where there is no risk. It's not like a direct mail or a Facebook lead where there is an essence of opt-in compliance. The client requested the information, there's a history of it, and you can compliantly call those leads. That is not the case with many of these telemarketing generators. Now, I'm sure some of them are honest, but I couldn't tell you who is and who isn't. And the other thing is, I can't validate they're actually doing what it is that I tell them. So the bottom line, guys, I don't mean to go on and on about this, but all y'all are probably going to be propositioned to buy these amazing live transfer telemarketing leads for like $8, $9, or live transfers of $20 to $25. Stay away from it. You are going to be at risk of getting a TCPA violation. And there is ample opportunity for professional litigants nationwide to take you to court and make you pay. Stay away as much as you can. So just do one of the other vendors that are out there that we've mentioned. That's where I would steer you towards. Stay as far away from these telemarketing options as possible. The only exception is if there's a vendor that has some sort of U.S.-based operation that could be named in a lawsuit, and you could say, hey, look at him, not me. But even so, as time progresses, I just don't feel comfortable even with that. And there have been organizations and carriers that have flat out said, if you are caught using telemarketing leads, we will fire you, we will terminate you, we don't care, because of these things that have come up I've described earlier. Okay, so that's leads. Long story short, my advice to you would be to watch this in detail, go back through it, take notes, do some due diligence and investigate. All of these lead options are fantastic, the ones that I've mentioned, and there's definitely pros and cons to all of them. Bottom line, pick the one that's best suited for you and go all in. This is not a business where you have to diversify the kind of leads that you do. I truly believe the best agents pick one strategy and just scale into it to the maximum amount possible. And those are usually ones that are the top 10% producers. So if you got questions about leads, post them in the chat. We're going to go back to the chat now and kind of run through things. So I hope you enjoyed today's broadcast. All right. Hey, Taroni, I use MailPro Leads. I purchased internet leads and some 3-month-old fax mailers from there. This is my first week. Good. Yeah. Best of luck to you. We didn't talk about age leads. I failed to mention that. You can definitely have some good results from age direct mail leads, worked or unworked. We definitely have access to that at the Ford Insurance Group. Treat those leads as if they're brand new. It's likely the persons who sent that back sent another lead back in the meantime, and just act as if they just did it, is how I would recommend to use those. Okay. Hey, Corey, just started purchasing leads from my broker who generates them in-house. Previous leads purchased from various lead vendors. For Facebook leads for garbage. Yeah, and I'll also source to you guys, if you want to see some agents' response to how leads work. There is a video, very good. If you put in David Duford, best and worst final expense leads, we did a survey video earlier this year where I surveyed, I think it was like 90 to 100 people on what the best and worst leads are in final expense. And so you can see for yourself kind of what I've talked about validated there, but by your fellow agents. That is a very good video to watch. It'll give you even more perspective on what's considered good leads and bad leads. I closed about 1 out of 3 with the in-house leads. That's really good. Yeah, super legit, man, all day long. Alan, so excited for mine to show up. I ordered 20 last Tuesday and another 20 today. Very good. Hey, Jackson, what are your thoughts on an agent using an underwriting health condition carrier cheat sheet as their primary guide to asking a prospect questions about their health? I mean, it's fine as a guide. You should ask the questions on the application if for no reason other than compliance with the carrier. You're supposed to ask them. But you also need to make sure that you ask the questions on the application because sometimes things are lost in transition between a guide and then what the actual questions are. And you want to make sure the client can actually answer the question yes or no. There have been times when I failed to do that personally, and I forgot to ask some little variant of the question, which the client had to honestly answer yes to. So I wasted a ton of my time, a ton of their time, and didn't make the deal because at the end of the day, I looked like an idiot because I wasn't thorough. It's best to be thorough with your clients. It's okay to ask these questions in detail. You might as well make sure that you're going to get the sale than to take the chance that you might not, right? Because you're being lazy or concerned. Oh, they won't listen to me. No, everybody appreciates thoroughness, especially with this. Okay, Christian, hey, just started a Facebook lead campaign. Currently $6.14 per lead. Yeah, absolutely. So that's good. Let us know, Christian, in the chat if you're still here, if those are like a face-to-face lead or they're telesales. I think that would be helpful. Hey, Brian. Hey, Dave. Do you think Family First Life mess up the insurance lead game by hiring too many agents? And now direct mail clients don't fill the postcards out. I don't think they're to blame. I think that at the end of the day, the truth is this business, like, think about this business for a second. You can literally, without any experience in marketing or sales or insurance sales, walk into final expense, and this is how it had been for years, and still is to a certain extent, buy leads, talk to low-income people who don't have a lot of times 2 pennies to rub together, and sell them final expense or life insurance and possibly make a 6-figure income. I mean, as much as like middle and upper middle managers are making. It's crazy. And you can do it if you're good, like in 2 or 3 days a week. So this is something I think kind of like in perspective is unusual in the job market. And it's going to invariably attract attention and interest. You mean I don't have to work in corporate America 60 hours slaving away at a terrible wage? I can work and have a lifestyle and do the things I want to and make a good amount of money? Possibly. It's very achievable in a short time for some people. And the point is, I think when you have that type of opportunity, and as word gets out, the supply of leads or capability to generate leads is going to run up against an ever-increasing demand. And of course, if there's higher demand and a supply that isn't as well matched for it, the only things can happen is prices are going to go up for acquisition costs. And that's what we've kind of faced. But if it wasn't FFL, it would have been somebody else, right? And even so, with all that's going on, it was already trending this way. The truth is, Brian, this business, we've seen lead prices go from $25 a lead till $17, $18, $30 a lead, right? Same thing with Facebook. So it was all going to happen. The time horizon in which it was going to happen, who knows? And it's just played out the way it has been. All right. And this is partially too, I'll mention this too. This is why, in part, I got into the Medicare space. One of the things that's nice about the Medicare space is the ability to reduce your overall acquisition cost for a client. We've got an agent right now in Florida who his average acquisition cost per client, so how much money he has to spend to get a client, is about $250 to $300. Now, luckily, his average commission is about $900 to $1,000, so it's manageable, okay? I'd like to see it higher than that, but that's good. But that's a lot of money, okay? And with the Medicare side of the business, it is possible, especially if you get into our lead subsidy program where we pay you money for each Medicare Advantage sale you make. If you're a good agent, you close 1 out of 4 of your Medicare leads, and you apply the lead subsidy your acquisition cost is $25 a sale. $25. $250 to $25. So I could acquire for the same amount of money and one final expense 10 Medicare Advantage plans if my math is right. Not to mention expose myself to all sorts of cross-sell opportunities, hospital indemnity plans, final expense, right? So, but at a cost that's a tenth of what it costs this particular agent to generate a sale. So my point being, one of my strategies overall going forward has been for the last couple of years is to transition agents out from final expense to work into Medicare because the acquisition cost situation is so much lower. The other side of the equation too that's unique is that if you look at the Medicare space right now, a lot of the money from carriers that goes to these places of production have been directed to the call center stuff. A lot of you are familiar with the Joe Namath ads on commercials driving to these big players in the call center space. But if you look or pay any attention to call centers that are selling Medicare, they have all been decimated over the last year. The retention rates on keeping people on the books for plans, which is how you make money in Medicare, has been abysmal. And a lot of carriers are starting to transition their money that they would subsidize for these call centers towards individual agents running their system like you and me, or smaller call centers where quality of the interaction with the client, like it is with an in-person or over-the-phone agent, but an individual agent, is much heralded at a higher rate. I have an agent right now in the Midwest because of his production, and he spreads it out over multiple carriers. There's a particular carrier that's going to give him $10,000, and he's lined up in quarter 2 and 3 to get $10,000 in lead money from a major carrier you've all heard of. And the only reason he's only been in the business full time for a year. The reason he's done that is because he's produced a ton of business, and that this particular carrier, as will many more, are very concerned about retention. And they want to subsidize the players that are moving the most amount of business in their direction. This is why, for me, Medicare is a very, very good opportunity. And you probably are going to regret not getting into it sometime over the next couple of years, because more and more of the big MLMs out there are going to see the attraction of this. There's going to be more people moving in the Medicare space. The time is now, or very soon in the future, to look to doing some business in the Medicare space, if for only one reason, is that it is, with the right arrangement, very, very affordable, especially more so compared to than final expense, to generate a sale. Literally talking to the same people, and then adding in cross sales, enhancing that first year commission that much more. So obviously you guys can tell I'm like super sold on it. It's a big deal for me in the direction I'm turning. Check out daviddufour.com/Medicare-Advantage for more. If you guys got questions on that, keep asking. What are your thoughts on Symmetry for final expense? Symmetry to me is more of a mortgage protection firm. I don't know if they've changed their kind of approach to the business. I've had some people on like Frank Brennis and one of his agents I've done some interviews with. You can check out. I've done the interviews over the last month or two. They know what they're doing on the mortgage protection side. I don't know what, if anything, do on the final expense side. As always, with any of these kind of review situations, talk to the upline that you're thinking about joining. Ask them pointed questions. Why should I join you? What makes you different? How are you going to help me? And do that same kind of question thing with multiple agencies, because you need to look at this like you're getting married. Just don't jump in bed with the first thing you see. Never really is a good strategy anyway in life. But you want to be committed long-term to an agency in all seriousness. So do your due diligence. Slow down, research, contemplate, talk to, and pick the agency that best reflects what it is you're looking to accomplish. Hey, Jackson, if a field agent insists on wearing a mask for all in-home face-to-face presentations for personal health issues, would it likely harm sales? Have any of your agents had bad experience with this? I don't think so, man. I don't think that's an issue. I haven't heard agents complaining or having concerns with masks, social distancing, or COVID literally since probably third or fourth quarter 2020. Like literally 6 or 8 months after it all started. I don't think it's a big deal. And the thing, too, I think most people at the end of the day, if you insist on wearing a mask, which that's your thing, man. If you want to do that, I don't think people are going to be like, oh, you're an idiot. Why are you wearing a mask? Most people are going to be reasonable, say, hey, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. The question becomes, well, if you make me do it and I don't believe in it, that's a different story. But I don't see why you would have any issue with your personal safety and health concerns wearing a mask. I don't think it's going to be a big issue at all. All right, Jackson, how are we doing on questions here? Cool. Sorry, guys. Catch you back up where I was. Okay. How many live TV transfers minimum a week do you suggest? 15 to 20 a week. That's the bare minimum. With a quality vendor, you shouldn't do any less than that. I don't even let my agents do less than 15 to 20 a week. And they got to be full-time. And the other thing, too, is you need to make sure that your availability is full-time. So you got to be willing to take calls 40 hours a week. That's at least how it works with me. I've found with vendors that don't require that, the consistency in receiving leads is lower. It's not as good of an experience. Thoughts on leads from the lead jerk? Also good. They're fine with me. Matt Lowry's been in the business forever as an agent, also a lead generator. He understands the final expense business. He is something in his businesses. If you're going to look at telemarketed leads, that would be one to consider. I've done an interview with him in the past. Good guy. Knows his stuff. Right? Hey, Tracy, thanks for the advice on the importance of being aware of the possible TCPA violations. Yeah, you're welcome, Tracy. No problem. Just make sure I didn't miss any questions. Hey, Tyrone, I missed your question, man. How can we find these places to host a seminar? I would put in senior living apartment near me to just start the process. And you're looking for HUD facilities or low-income facilities. And there's usually, they're in big cities, they're in little cities, they're in rural America, they're everywhere. So that's where I would start, and you'll find plenty of them. Hey, Don. Taurus, hey, what are the best vendors for final expense and Medicare Advantage, in your opinion? Go back and watch the entirety of this video. We'll mention some. I'll mention them briefly. Lead Concepts, need a lead for final expense direct mail. My internal vendor for fixed price leads, shameless plug. Facebook, if you're going to buy leads, ttcleads.com, and then happyagentleads.com. If you want to self-generate, Bobby V's course or Agent Autopilot's course is very good. I think that's it. Yeah. And then Medicare Advantage, we do direct mail at a fixed price. They're $25 a piece. They're very good leads. And we have a lead subsidy program. Optional, you have to commit to us a number of years to sell Medicare Advantage with us to get it. But it will lower your acquisition costs tremendously. Thoughts on leads? Hey, Jackson from Lead Jerk. Already answered that. Sorry about that. Best way to prospect to book appointments, pick up the phone. Hey, Mrs. Jones, this is David Duford calling you back on this pink postcard you mailed off requesting information on our new state-regulated final expense programs. Hey, look, it's my job to deliver this information to you. What you decide to do with it's up to you. I'm going to be in Chattanooga tomorrow. How about I come by at 10 or does 2 work better? Just go back. This is all recorded. Go back to that script. Write this down word for word. Do exactly what I've just described. Go back to some of my appointment setting videos if you want some more context, why it works, how it works, what's good about it. You can say the same thing in person, door knocking. That works really well too. The close, though, would be, do you want to sit out on the porch or should I come in at the table? Kitchen table, right? Hey, Legos for Life. What's the ideal demographic for Effects client, age and income-wise? 50 and older, under, think working class or basically low income. Rural, inner city. We don't like to go to suburbia, traditionally middle class, but you're looking for poor people, basically, that are old poor people. For example, you might have old people, but they may not be poor. Think Southeast Florida. A lot of old people there that got money. Well, they're not good final expense prospects, okay? You might have young people that are poor. Well, that's different because they don't have a fixed income, right? There's not a consistency in income, and there's not as much urgency to buy as somebody who's old. So think old, poor people. Lots of those everywhere. Don, I think people that respond to mail are going to respond to mail, and it's solid. People aren't always so tech savvy. Yeah, 100%. Hey, Christian. Face-to-Face just started yesterday morning with a small budget for testing. 6 leads, 2 appointments. All right, man. Good luck. Make some sales. Okay, cool. Hey, nice. And you did the Facebook leads, right? So that's really good, man. Hey, Don, the online saturation just makes direct mail that much more valuable. Yeah, 100%. For sure. Just it's more expensive. That's all. Hey, Jackson, if the field agent insists on wearing a mask, I think I already answered that, so we're good. Anthony, I see your question there. I think they're fine. Just check who you're training with, who's going to be training you, vet them, compare their commission levels to what your commissions or another agency's commissions are. Again, kind of my recommendation for what you're describing, I would do with any agency. And the best thing you could do is just do the same kind of due diligence with, say, 3 agencies. See how they respond, see what their culture is like in their agency, and pick the one that works best for you is what I would suggest. And being an independent agent, I mean, you can in the context of what you're describing because they do have access to a multitude of carriers. So that does help. But again, check the commission levels against what you could get elsewhere. That's a big factor, I think. Not everything, but it is a big factor. Do you have any general opinion on agency selling Lincoln Financial? Oh, so Lincoln Heritage is the company. Lincoln Heritage is, again, it's a one product agency. If you work for Lincoln, I'm careful with my words here. Some of them allow you to contract with other carriers, right? But generally speaking, the strategy is you join Lincoln Heritage to sell Lincoln Heritage. It's the Lincoln Heritage way. Where you're going to find this is a good fit for are agents who really need kind of the traditional approach to the business. A lot of Lincoln Heritage is in an agency that's local in base and local in scope. There's a lot more hands-on activity, and it is a very greatly simplified business. You just get leads, you run appointments, and you sell one product. My problem is not so much with Lincoln. They're a fantastic company, and there are people who make good money there. My problem is with the independent agent mindset, and this isn't a Lincoln thing, it's just a difference, is without options, you're potentially putting yourself in a position to be replaced more often. And if the product is priced higher, if I come behind you as an independent agent, you sold for a high-priced company, you're more likely to get replaced than you would if you had a multitude of carriers and you sold a competitively priced, good underwriting product. So I feel, and it's not always the case that this happens, some agents do just fine, but I feel like in any situation where you're representing one product or one company, you're greatly restricting the ability to help your client out optimally. And it can cause you suffering if there are good agents that are good at getting in the door and showing a client a better deal and replacing that business. So these are risks that I worry about and I tend to stay away from and preach against, not because it's a bad company, but I just think it's a bad strategy that potentially will cost you tremendously. Okay. All right. Let's go here. We're rounding out the questions here. So if you got any more, let me know. Justin, to sell Medicare, is that the A in the life and health or something? I have no idea what you're saying, man. Email me your question later if I jump off for you, clarify. Where do I get age direct mail leads? We sell them. A lot of agencies sell them. Just ask around. They usually have access. How many policies, hey, Tony, are usually sold online through Zoom or Google Meet versus in person? If you're selling final expense, nobody uses Zoom, nobody uses Google Meet. Mildred is not capable 5 out of 10 times of even getting on her computer. Just don't do it. Instead, pick the phone up and call. Okay? So most of the telesales or virtual or remote sales that are made are not made on Zoom, but made off of just pure old-fashioned talking on the phone. Okay? Mortgage protection, a lot different. You'll do a lot more Zoom there if you're doing like a remote strategy. Okay? All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for me. Join me tomorrow. I will be doing a talk on how I built my insurance IMO. If you're interested in agency building, or if you want to see kind of like under the hood of how I recruit 1,000 agents a year as a painfully shy introvert who never leaves his home and doesn't spend any money on marketing and does it all organically. If you want to kind of hear me talk about how it was done and my story behind doing so, join me tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be talking about that. If you're, again, interested in building, this should be some good advice on how to like do this and duplicate kind of what I've done. So wonderful. So join you then. Last here, Legos. Hey, how quickly I get up running if I started joining your agency? 2 to 3 weeks, assuming you're already licensed. We want you selling insurance on the phone or in person within 2 to 3 weeks. If I can help you learn more about joining my agency, daviddufour.com/FAQ or daviddufour.com/contact. Thank you, Lola. Thank you, everybody else. I'm starving. I got to go get something to eat. Y'all take care. See you tomorrow. Bye.